Okay, we'll go ahead and call our meeting to order. And Ms. Reyes, will you call roll, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Bryant,
Here.
Commissioner Rowley,
Here.
Raymond Mondragon, Rachel Holler, Commissioner Martin, Vince DeMaio, Commissioner Jones, Commissioner Bryant,
Here.
and Harry Pomeroy.
Okay, thank you. And we do have a quorum this morning. So we'll move down to the approval of the minutes of April 10th. Those were sent out by email to all the members of the committee. And I will entertain a motion for approval if there are no changes.
So move.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of April 10th. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Same with those opposed. Motion carries. Okay, our first update this morning is from the Eastern New Mexico Water Utility Authority with Mr. Ortega. And a lot's been happening with the water project, so welcome to the meeting. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Glad to provide a report this morning to you. If you take a look at the slides on your screen and follow that, that would be ideal. I got to control that. I got spoiled before your folks took care of this for me, but now I can do it. Maybe.
Maybe.
I don't know which way to point it, what to point it to. There we go. Okay. So this slide here just kind of gives you all an idea of the overall project and the main components to the Eastern New Mexico rural water system. I can see that we have one new member of the committee here that this may be new information to you. So a lot of the pipeline is transmission. We have finished water pipelines. That means that this water will be south of the water treatment plant once it's treated. The water that comes from the reservoir to the treatment plant is called raw water, which is raw water from the reservoir. And then we have two laterals, one lateral going to Texaco and another lateral going to Elida. So right now, this slide here kind of demonstrates the activity that's occurring right now as we speak, and we're basically working on every aspect of the project in one form or fashion. We're designing some pipeline and facilities such as pump stations, water treatment plant. We're also constructing pipeline in different parts of the project. So just a little more in detail, I can show you that we're some of the projects that we're doing in real time. Finished Water 3, which is the pipeline from connecting from northwest of Cannon Air Force Base to Portales, is under construction. And that's, as you can see, a little over 17 miles of 20-inch PVC water transmission pipeline. The next project is Finished Water 1, which is connecting to the north end of what we call Finished Water 2, the pipeline that has already been constructed connecting the community of Clovis and Cannon Air Force Base. Finished Water 1 is 15.5 miles directly north on Curry Road R, and that is currently under construction. We're just now gearing up in construction, doing some fencing and clearing and grubbing. Pipeline is to be delivered, or pipe is to be delivered around the end of July, August timeframe. And then the project after that is Raw Water 3, which is just north of the water treatment plant location, and Raw Water 3 takes us all the way to the edge of the Caprock. So we're looking at about 26 miles there of 42-inch diameter pipeline. That phase is just about almost 100% complete with design. We're currently acquiring easements along that phase, and we hope to be able to go out to bid by late summer with this project. The next one is the Texaco Lateral, which is the pipeline connecting the community of Texaco. That's 4.4 miles of 8-inch diameter. Most likely will be PVC. This project is going well also. We actually moved this project up on the priority list because Texaco is really having some challenges with meeting their demands and have been for about 3 or 4 years now. So we were able to work with EPCOR and the city of Clovis in connecting at the airport location there, which greatly reduced the length of our original pipeline. Now we're looking at about 4.4 miles of that, and we hope to be able to go out to bid early fall with that project. The next project here that is Raw Water 2, which is a 3-mile section of the area of the Caprock. You can either see it at the bottom going up, or you can see it at the top going down. But anyway, we're currently working on that and looking to see what the best alternative is on how we will get to the top of that Caprock. Raw Water 1 is the next one on the list, and that is the last phase of transmission pipeline that will connect to the reservoir, and that will be at the base of the Caprock and all the way to the reservoir. That's about a 28-mile pipeline and 42-inch diameter. Currently working with geotech work there, geophysics, working on 90% design, and easement acquisition has begun. So we're making good progress with that also. And then the next one is the Elida Lateral and Pump Station, which we have another team working on design on that project, and about to kick off the easement acquisition. The Elida Lateral and the Texaco Lateral, because the diameters are such small pipe, we'll be putting this pipeline in right-of-way, state right-of-way, for much of it. There are some private easements that we have to purchase and acquire, and mostly when we're crossing from one side of the highway to the other. And then the last bullet point on this page here are the Eastern New Mexico Rural Water System facilities, which are the water treatment plant, the Caprock pump station and tank, and the intake pump station. All of that is underway and making good progress with that. Just a few photos that you all probably recognize, but that's the entrance to the intake facility at Ute Reservoir that was constructed back in 2016. The actual pump station will reside above the forebay shaft. If you look beyond the fence there, you can see kind of a circular piece of concrete. That is the forebay shaft. That is where the water comes into the facility from the reservoir using two tunnels, and a building will be built over that, and then pumps will be set in place within the forebay shaft, and then pumped out from there to the base of the Caprock. Just a photo there of a vault. This is a vault on Finished Water 2, the pipeline to Clovis, or at one of the Clovis vault locations, just so you get an idea of what that looks like. All of this is buried underground. This is what it looks up above. We have, in some cases, vent pipes that's come out of the ground, and then we have hatches where the operators can go down and inspect and maintain the valves and so forth. Is there water flowing through here? What's that? Is there water flowing through here? There is water in the pipelines, but water is not flowing. When we complete a project, a phase of a project, the contractor is required to test it, to do a hydrostatic test to make sure that we build up the pressure to make sure there aren't any leaks or any problems with the pipeline. So once that occurs, the water gets treated, and we allow the water to stay in the pipeline. For example, the larger diameter pipe is steel pipe, but it's coated in the inside of the pipe with concrete or cement, and that cement has to be wet in order for it to be durable and long-lasting. So the pipes, the phases of construction as they are completed, the pipes get filled and hydrostatic tested. And then we do have a small team of operators and maintainers that go out and inspect the pipe regularly and turn valves just to exercise them to make sure that they don't just sit there and freeze up on us when the time comes that we need to use them. This is a photo of some clearing and grubbing along the pipeline route to Portales. What we normally do with this is that once we give notice to proceed to the contractor, they come in and they survey the easement area, then they build a fence, a construction fence along the edge of the easement, and then we normally, where we can, preserve 18 inches of topsoil, we do that, and we request that the contractor puts the topsoil to one side and then the spoils to the other, so that that topsoil is preserved and kept clean. Once everything is constructed and put back, then that top 18 inches of topsoil is put back and then reseeded. A few examples of our construction headed to Portales. As you can see, when that pipe is set, we do add some bedding underneath and around the pipe in order to protect it. In some cases, it's a granular bedding, and in some cases, it's a controlled low-strength material. Another photo, an example of a finished vault. This is a vault to Portales. Underground and above ground. And a photo of restoration here. You can see where the contractor has completed the project and has brought the topsoil back and has leveled it, and then the seeding will come after that. Just want to highlight a little bit about the funding that is occurring during our processes now. As you may know or do know, back in 2021, our project was one of 5 rural water projects that were listed on the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act funding. With that, $1 billion was set aside for those 5 projects, of which the Eastern New Mexico Rural Water System is receiving a bulk of that funding. We had some great success both in 2022 and 2023 with the New Mexico legislative sessions, very supportive of the project and meeting the state's match of 15% to this federal funding. Just to give you an example, in fiscal year 22, we received $177.4 million in federal funds through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act funding, and a little bit of additional funding through our congressional delegation. We also, that same year, which was last year, we received $30 million in capital outlay. And then, of course, the Eastern New Mexico Water Utility Authority match to that at 10% was $20,740,000. So a total of $228,140,000 for fiscal year 22. Really gave the authority a boost in ramping up all of our projects, as you can see. Fiscal year 23 has been also very successful, as you can see here this year. And just to let you know, the infrastructure funding that will be distributed, that $1 billion will be distributed over a 5-year period, starting in fiscal year 22. So as you can see, the 22 funding was 177.4 million, and then the fiscal year 23, which was announced just about 2 months ago, 94.140. So a good second year for us that keeps us on schedule. Water Trust Board funding, we recently received an award there of $13,900,000, of which 10% of that is in loan to the authority. So that's a portion of the membership's match. The match of the authority is 10% of the overall project. We also were very fortunate to receive funding from the state legislature this year in the amount of $15 million. So a total of 123 and 40,000 to add to last year's funding. Of course, the authority's match to that is 10%. And the way that the authority is matching these capital outlay projects are through 2 loans. One is they're both drinking water state revolving loans. And we are making a total amount of a $47 million loan to be able to meet the match. Our goal and hope is that we don't have to borrow a whole lot more, but the estimated amount was about $80 million. We're doing very well with the project. We're actually under budget with all of our phases so far, and we'll continue to work towards that. But we do have to meet our match, as does the state of New Mexico, to that federal funding. So the overall breakdown of the funding is 75% federal, 15% state of New Mexico, either through capital outlay or Water Trust Board funding, and then the remaining 10% is through ENMWA match. Just want to also point out that the authority does fund the administrative operations of the authority, and that is, that's a budget also that we have to keep the operations of the authority moving forward with all that we do. We work with a very lean staff. You have an administrator and 3 employees, of which 2 of those employees are part-time. So, we're feeling a little bit of the pains now with the ramp up that we're doing, but we certainly are very sensitive and aware to the cost to the authority through the administrative side, and we do everything we can to keep all costs down, whether it's administration or engineering or anything else that's related to the authority. This is the 5-year schedule that we began with in fiscal year 22. That we proposed to the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation for that 5-year funding cycle, and at this moment and at this point we are on schedule and already working towards fiscal year 2024 requests of federal funding and doing well. Our hope is that by 2029 this project will be completed. And working after that over the course of 12 months, beyond that to about 24 months to actually get the system operating and delivering water. Just want to touch a little bit on the local economic impact to our communities. Anytime there's a construction project nearby, we actually stir up a lot of economic activity. So, for example, we've had Finish Water 2, that was a 1.5-year construction project. Finish Water 3 was 1 year, and Finish Water 1 will be a 2-year construction project. On average, we're seeing about 40 construction jobs on site, about 15 support admin and staff jobs off site. We have normally about 4 certified welders welding the pipe together. We have underground tunnel crews. We have on average about 20 specialized jobs, from steel workers to cement finishers, painters, fencing, land restoration, etc. We have 10 engineers and support involved. We have lots and lots of people on the ground and making sure that our quality control and quality assurance is there. We want to make sure that this project, all of these pipelines are built to specifications, because we count on this pipeline being in good working order for many, many decades. Surveyors, and then in the paragraph below it reads numerous economic activity, including local concrete, local building materials, aggregate materials, fencing, trucking, fuel and lubricants, seating, hotels, apartments, RV parks, video and photography, documentation, restaurants, grocery stores, New Mexico gross receipts tax to Curry County, City of Clovis, and the state of New Mexico. And if we're over in Roosevelt County, they reap from those benefits also. And then regional economic impacts here, you can see examples such as pipeline design teams. So I'm talking about engineers that work for us that are either in the area in New Mexico or even a little further beyond in some cases, depending on their expertise. We have surveyors, geotech boring crews. For example, our geotech boring crew is coming from Farmington, and they spend a lot of time here, and they sometimes rent apartments or rent hotels, eat at our restaurants, buy our groceries, and so forth. We have geophysics, environmental and cultural services, property appraisal services, title and abstract services, purchase of easements, permitting, project management, and administrative. And then the greater economic impact means that anyone that is involved in this project or in one form or fashion is actually put to work in creating this. Because of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, there was an act in that was called the Build America, Buy America Act, and it requires us to use American-made products. All of them have to be American-made. So from the raw material to the finished product, this project is American-made going forward. There are some exceptions. For example, magnesium is not made in the U.S., and we use magnesium on occasions for corrosion control, cathodic protection. And in cases like that, we have to request a waiver to the Department of Interior, and they review those and either accept them or make us use something different. So it's a pretty stringent process. We're glad and excited that we are able to use American products everywhere we can, and will do that. And that's the presentation. Thank you very much for allowing us to be here today.
Thank you, Mr. Ortega, appreciate it. Any questions? Yes, Commissioner?
With the easements that you have for your pipeline,
Turn your speaker on the back.
with the easements that you have with the property owners, what kind of compensation is in consideration for damage to growing crops when you go in, and also for the restriction that is imposed by the fencing to keep them from being able to use the land during the construction?
Member Martin, yes, we do everything that we can. First and foremost is utmost respect to the land, to the property, and to the property owners that we work with. First of all, we have certain guidelines that we have to adhere to that are federal and state guidelines in easement acquisition. We follow those guidelines. We do have appraisals done on the properties, and the authority basically tries to not get involved with that too much. We kind of separate ourselves from the appraisal process. The appraiser goes out and makes arrangements to meet with property owners so they can get a good feel of what their property is coming from the owner's perspective. Once the appraisal is complete, then that appraisal goes out to another appraisal service, and they do an independent review of that appraisal to make sure that it is accurate and fair. Once that occurs, then that comes back to the hands of the authority, and we prepare an offer to the property owner, and that's how that process works. As far as the properties, once we enter those properties, or in preparing to enter those properties, we certainly encourage communication with all property owners. The more communication we have with them, the better the whole process works for everyone. And with that, we have had very good luck with property owners that are very communicative. But we do meet with them, and we will meet with them at their properties to look at their concerns or their requests or their situations. And I'll try to give some examples here, just so you can kind of understand what we do. But we just met with some property owners just about a week or so ago, and some of their concerns were the cattle grazing. We're entering more grazing land now than we are ag land, farmland. And what they're concerned about is they don't want their cattle falling into the trench, getting hurt or getting injured or dying. And we certainly respect that. What we have offered to them, rather than putting a plastic construction, temporary construction fencing, that we will install a barbed wire fence that will help keep the cattle out of the easement area. We also offer grazing loss. So what we do is we work with the property owner to determine that grazing loss. And normally on the larger pipelines, for example, they're going to be longer in time for construction. So we're seeking, for example, on the temporary construction easements, we're seeking 5 years for that. But we're also compensating the property owner for 5 years of that temporary construction easement. But what we would like to do, and what we plan to do, is that we would work with the property owner to say, hey, we're going to keep that temporary fence up, that barbed wire fence up for the 5 years to allow the land to heal, but we'll pay you for that 5 years. Now, if there's an example that, let's say there's a property owner that has their land on CRP, and we interfere with that, we will compensate the property owner for that loss of that CRP for the duration of that contract, because those contracts are pretty strict, I believe, with CRP. And let's say, for example, if a property owner has a 10-year contract with CRP, and we enter that property, let's say 3 years into that 10-year contract, we will compensate them for that full contract, for that property, for the easement area only. We can't compensate them for the whole thing, because the other part won't be disturbed. Other examples, if there's property owners that have underground pipelines, for example, to their windmills, or if there are cattle that we may interfere with one of their watering tanks for their cattle, we will make arrangements to put a temporary water tank and pipe to a different area where the cattle can have water to drink. Those kinds of things that we work with.
Answer your question?
It didn't answer anything to do with the agriculture. I know one individual out there that, well, he may be sitting right here too, where you're restricting the use of sprinklers because it goes into the area that's being farmed. Also, where they've had wheat, where cattle were grazing, but then during this period of time they will not be able to farm that land. But it
Sure.
sounds like you're trying to compensate where you can, and they just contact you directly or your office?
Yes, sir, absolutely. And I'll speak on ag. Same thing with agriculture. We have worked with property owners who have had pivots, and we're very sensitive to that. Unfortunately, in some cases, we can't avoid that. But we have, in the past two projects, we have had pivots that we've worked with, and we've worked with the property owners. For example, on Finished Water 2, we worked with the property owners where the timing was, where we worked with their timing on the movement of their sprinkler. And when that sprinkler was coming near the turn or getting into the easement area, the contractor prepared that soil, that land, to allow that pivot to not stop. We did that on Finished Water 2, on Finished Water 3 also with a dairy farm out there that he was ready to start watering his circle, and that soil was moved over, those piles of soil, in order to not interfere with that pivot. So we've had good luck with working with property owners. Anytime there's crop loss, for example, in the easement area, the same thing goes, same example as grazing loss. Let's say, for example, a person has, a property owner has planted wheat, and he plans to graze that crop for a certain period of time. Normally, they come in at a certain time when they feel that it's good enough to graze, and then they'll graze it to a certain time, and then they stop it in order for it to continue to grow, so they can harvest that. We will pay that grazing fee or that grazing loss on that wheat, but we'll also compensate them for the crop loss on that acreage. So we certainly are sensitive to that, and we'll work with them on that. Normally, the way we compensate them is we have to have proof. We can't just write a check because we're government, and so we have to have proof. So what we normally do is ask the property owner to give us a receipt of what he harvested on the area that was not disturbed, and we work with that. So if they say, let's say they averaged 30 bushels per acre or 50 bushels per acre or whatever, then if we have a receipt proving that, then we can compensate them for the area that we took out for that amount. So there's compensation for loss of grazing and compensation for loss of crop. And if that occurs 2 years, then we will do the same for those 2 years. Normally what we do when there's pivots involved, we try to work with the property owner, and Mr. DeMaio, we certainly want to work with you, is that we will get in and out of there as quickly as we can. And we have certainly will want to do that with you, Mr. DeMaio.
Okay, any other questions? Yes. You want to turn your microphone on? There you go. Thank you.
Still, all right, I'll just talk loud. So I had a quick follow-up question to his, is you mentioned there were guidelines that you guys use. Are those publicly available, or where would we find those?
They are, yes. Everything we have is public, ma'am. And,
Okay.
we can certainly pull those and show those to you.
Okay. And my second question was, I do appreciate the economic impact. We always love more jobs coming here. I'm curious, though, about environmental impact. What efforts do we have, or is any of the funding being used to kind of just reduce the use of water overall? Anything like that we're doing to actually help improve the environment?
I don't understand your question, I'm sorry.
Like water conservation efforts. So rather than, I know we're getting all these water pipes, and that's fantastic, and that we're expanding where the water can go. But ideally, we definitely want to be able to use less water. So is there any efforts going in that direction?
Yes, ma'am. My role is not in that arena. My job is to construct this pipeline. But let me tell you, I've been involved with water since 1996, and have been very closely in one form or fashion in all aspects of that. I can tell you the city of Clovis and the city of Portales are doing a lot in all aspects of that. The portfolio is what we call is the overall portfolio of water and water use in our communities. How are we going to survive Well, this pipeline isn't the only answer to our survival. We need everything that we can to do that. So, renewable water source, which is the Ute Reservoir and the Ute pipeline, is one source. The existing well fields that the member communities own and have invested a lot of money in over many decades will be another source that they need to continue to manage and operate and continue to try to make good use of that. Water conservation means that we all use less water, and everyone has done that really to a great extent, both in Portales and the city of Clovis. And there are numbers to prove that over the last 20 years. I mean, we've gone from here to here in water use and have done real well with that. Water reuse is another, which is the recycling of water. And again, both the city of Portales and the city of Clovis have invested millions of dollars in water reuse. And I know that a report may be provided today on how much that is occurring, but great strides in that. Restoration of playas is another one that has been a big effort, especially here in Curry County, because you have a lot of playas here. And the way I see playas is that's God's way of helping recharge the aquifer. They're kind of like big funnels, And then other things such as I believe the Ogallala Land and Water Conservancy is another new group that's come out in recent last couple of years. And what they're trying to do is trying to generate funds to pay agriculturalists or farmers to maybe set aside their ag use and maybe consider doing dry land in preserving the Ogallala aquifer. So a lot of things are happening, and we need all of those in order for us to have a bright future.
Thank you.
And Mr. Ortega addressed that pretty well on conservation, but we will again bring it up with EPCOR's presentation as well as the city's presentation as well. Any other questions for Mr. Ortega?
Yeah, I have a question on the easement acquisition. You said that you have the appraisers that do the appraisal and you negotiate. Is that the same process you go through with the state on state lease and federal lands?
No, the state lands are different. They have an application process that we have to follow, so it's different.
And is the payment significantly higher than the payment you pay the landowners?
It is. And I've argued that with the state land office, and I said, hey, we want to pay you the fair market price as we do everyone else, and they said, you are. But it's all of the additional fees that are tacked onto that add up to that amount. But it's, the thing about the state land is we don't have to pay any kind of additional compensations to the state, whereas with property owners we do. So we expend funds, as I've demonstrated here or described, in crop loss and other things. If there's pipes that need to be moved or things like that, that we certainly compensate the property owner for. So if you say, we pay the state a lot more than the others, by the time the dust settles, it's not a whole lot different.
So you don't restore the state land, you just leave it, you.
We do restore it, yes, sir.
So you do compensate them for that?
We do. We do restore the land.
So and if you tear a fence of theirs down, you replace that fence?
We do.
So that statement's not quite right. The
I'm
value of that
talking
easement,
about-
state land.
I'm talking
is what
about
they
crop
value.
loss and
I
grazing
understand,
losses.
but you still have to restore the property.
We do.
For damages that occur.
That's right.
But the state gets significantly more money, so their land's worth more than farmland.
No, I don't believe so.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, I know, Mr. Ortega, you have another meeting to be at. I appreciate you taking the time this morning to give us an update on the Water Authority. Commissioner Bryant, do you have anything?
Yeah, I do. I wanted to see if Orlando could elaborate on the Texaco lateral and what the cost savings are for the authority from tapping into the EPCOR line.
Yes, be glad to. Initially we were going to build the Texaco lateral. We were going to connect to Finish Water 2, which is over on Martin Luther King and Brady Avenue. And we were going to carry that pipeline east on Brady Avenue all the way to Texaco and then cut under the the railroad and then under the highway to get to Texaco. We were looking, and I'd have to kind of jog my memory on that, but we were looking at quite a bit, about 18, maybe to 20 million on constructing that lateral. With these changes that we've had in being able to work with EPCOR and the city of Clovis, with the city of Clovis investing to get the pipeline over to the airport, we were encouraged with that and began discussing that with the city and EPCOR and the possibility of connecting to that system, which would certainly shorten our pipeline. We're looking now at about $8 to $9 million in constructing. So we're looking at probably a savings from anywhere from 10 million to, I would say, 15 million, about that much, yes.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, Mr. Ortega, thank you. Appreciate the presentation.
You're welcome. And to add to that, in saving of time, to try to get this lateral built to Texaco, one agreement that we put in place with EPCOR and the Water Authority and the City of Texaco is that EPCOR is willing to provide water to Texaco in the interim as available. If they have it available, they will certainly sell water at the commercial rate to the City of Texaco. So that's a blessing, I believe, in order to try to get some relief over to the City of Texaco.
It is.
Thank you.
All right, we're down to number 5, which is an update from EPCOR with Major Mudgett.
Good morning.
Morning.
How is everybody? To give a little bit of an update here, I got a few notes, I'm sorry. Total pumping capacity right now for EPCOR is about 10.5 million gallons a day. That's what we can produce as of right now. In May, we averaged 6.2 million gallons a day. That was the usage that was being sent out into the system. In June, we averaged the 6.2 million again, which is only 61% of our pumping capacity. To kind of put it in a reference to 2022, our max day about this time was 9.1 million gallons per day, which was 84% of our capacity, which if you look at in today compared to last year, we're doing pretty good as far as that goes. Right now, some of the things that we're doing within the system, we've had contractors out replacing fire hydrants. Currently, we've replaced 6 fire hydrants just to for better fire prevention. 7th Street project is currently going on, as y'all noticed. During that process, whenever they were replacing the storm trains and everything like that, we took advantage of that and went ahead and are getting all of our lines that run down 7th Street replaced. Most of those being older lines, so they all went back in with new PVC, and during the process, we're going to replace and put new fire hydrants within that. Other extensions that we've had going on, the Curry County Extension Office, we just finished a line extension for them for about 730 foot of 6-inch PVC and tied that with a 2-inch water service. Some of the smaller ones, we have the Westminster subdivision of 7 residential lots, development with 7 apartments with 21 units to include 545 feet of 6-inch water line, and 1 new fire hydrant went in that system, or that division. There's also a contractor who completed a line extension to serve the Morning Star subdivision, which is 58 residential lots located south of Llano Estacado and the east side of Norris. That extension was 3,300 feet of 8-inch PVC, and we added new fire hydrants within that. Some of the upcoming projects that you're gonna see, North Prince Line Extension, we're gonna do a new line extension, kinda going from, that Blake's Lauterberger to, serve that new dentistry over there. We have 6084, East Project, which is gonna replace, they're gonna be redoing the 6084 highway, which during that process, we will, go in and replace all of our, water lines and put new PVC in them. On a fun event, Epcor Water is looking to put in they're gonna look to do the first ever water carnival is what we're calling it. August 26th, that'll be from 10 to 2. It's gonna be open to the community. We've worked with, the city and some other folks to kind of make this event pretty fun. We're gonna open up the splash pad and the zoo to folks. During that time, we're gonna have water magician come in and do stuff. We're gonna talk about conservation and things like that. That'll all be going on August 26th. And during that, there'll be free food, etc. I think we plan on a little over 1,000 people is what we were estimating, hopefully to come. So you'll start seeing some advertisement for that coming out, and it'll be kind of going in with the schools as well. So that's kind of all the updates that I have for Epcor.
Okay. How's your conservation projects going?
Good. We have a lot of people who take advantage of the xeriscaping and stuff like that. That we offer rebates for those who kind of want to conserve water. All of our information on those and what you can do to get in on those projects and fill out the applications are all on our website. We always encourage people to go on there and look at them, bring it into the office. Whenever people go to do the xeriscaping and stuff like that, we actually go out and inspect those periodically until the project's done. And once that project is finished, then we start applying all the rebates and whatnot.
Okay. And you're talking about that 9.1 million gallons a day in 22.
Mm-hmm.
Was that for May or June?
That was, actually, I don't know what day that was. That was probably in the month of June.
Okay.
I didn't write that down, but it was more than likely in the month of June.
Yeah, and that's
that
quite-
max day of 9.1.
That's quite a
yes, sir.
difference from 9.1 to 6.2.
Yeah.
What do you contribute that to? Do you think it's conservation?
I think a lot of it is conservation. The recent rainfalls have definitely helped, obviously. People aren't watering grasses or nothing like that. I would also attribute that to the reuse program. I think a lot of that comes from the reuse and all the parks and schools moving that direction.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Okay, good report, thank you, appreciate it. Okay, we'll move up to our city update with Mr. Howald.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. And I too would attribute a lot of that to our reuse system coming online and the more end users that we bring online. We're going to continuously to see that peak demand start to decrease. That was actually the intention of our reuse system going online in the first place, is trying to get those large end users, large irrigators, off of the city Epcor's system and onto our reuse system. So obviously continuing to work expanding that. And so recently I've actually been working with Clovis Municipal Schools. We currently have meters at both Marshall Middle School and at Bell Park. And so Jay Brady and Lauren Hill have actively been trying to get those green spaces off of Epcor system and bring them online. And so now they're trying to figure out where they can divide their irrigated system from their potable system needs at those locations to bring those two additional spaces online. For the month of May, we actually delivered 14 million gallons throughout the system itself, bringing our total for this fiscal year to 144 million gallons delivered. We're still collecting the meter readings for June, and so we'll close out this fiscal year at our next meeting and let you know what we did in fiscal year 23 versus fiscal year 22. Still working on the system. We still have some areas that we need to complete. Phase 2B, we were actually awarded Water Trust Board funding for Phase 2B. Unlike the Water Utility Authority that has a 90% grant and a 10% loan, we have a 60% loan and a 40% grant. So 1.5 million is a loan, and then the main $1 million will be a grant. But once again, that's still at 0.25% of an administrative fee. It's 0% interest, but they charge 0.25% of an administrative fee. Our designers have pretty much completed the plans. They're about 95%. Held a utility coordination meeting with the various utility companies throughout our area to make sure that if we needed to make any adjustments to the system, now is definitely the time for us to eliminate those conflicts within the plans. But have to have all of our readiness to proceed items to the Water Trust Board by September, which we will certainly do. And so once we've completed that and they've signed off on it, we'll get out to bid on that. With the completion of that project, that will allow us to have service to Clovis High School, Clovis High School Freshman Academy, Cameo Elementary, Sandia Elementary, Gaddis Middle School, and then Dennis Chavez Park. So you can see there's a lot of irrigated land out there that we're still trying to capture and bring them off of EPCOR's system. And so in regards to conservation and the way our water stages are set up, our first Stage 1 of water conservation for us kicks in when EPCOR is at 85% of their pumping capacity. So you can see that we're not even close to that. So we're sitting at 61%. And so as we continue to bring these users online to the reuse system, that percent capacity is just going to continue to drop. So the city of Clovis is in my opinion, is in really good position in regards to the system itself and the availability of water for our community. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, good update. Any questions? Commissioner?
Originally, most of that reused water was used for agriculture. Now that you've started using it in the city, has that cut the allocation that's being used at ag?
So we did have a contract with a adjacent property owner to us. And so we have, at this point in time, been able to meet his needs as well as the city of Clovis's needs. But theoretically, yes, in the future, more end users that we have come online, there would be less available water to that adjacent property owner.
Okay, anything else? Good update, thank you. Okay, we have one more update that's not actually on the agenda, but it's with Cannon Air Force Base with Mr. Chris Gerke. And I believe he's the project manager for the Air Force Civil Engineering Center, is that correct?
That is correct, sir. I'm the restoration project manager with Air Force Civil Engineer Center, and I am stationed here at Cannon Air Force Base, and I'm responsible for the restoration projects in its whole, but specifically what we're going to talk about today is the PFAS project that we have going on. And so as I believe all of you have the printout. And so this is the update that we give through our, do you want me to pass that around to anybody?
I can keep one, thank you.
There we go.
I think everybody else has one, thank you.
Okay. So this is the update that we give through our currently ongoing public meetings. I believe we've hosted 9 to date. We've transitioned over to a twice a year. So last one was in May, and the next one is slated to be in November, I believe the 15th. Currently, what we'll go over today is our AFFF PFAS investigation. We'll talk briefly on our engineering evaluation cost analysis pilot study, and then our due diligence for supplemental PFAS sources, and then just how we're going to continue going forward and pushing through this process. So with our AFFF PFAS investigation, AFFF was the biggest and main source of potential impacts to the environment, and so that is where the Air Force focused its investigation. So with firefighting foam is what generally you'll hear about with the aqueous film forming foam. To date, we've completed the preliminary assessment, the site investigation, inspection, and also now we are currently undergoing the remedial investigation, which is including a lot of on-base and off-base soil samples, groundwater samples, installing additional groundwater monitoring wells and lysimeters. And so, to date, what we have done, so this will be on page 4, or slide 4. The remedial investigation to date, we have completed a significant amount of soil samples, both on and off base, approximately 753 on base, 34 off base, sediment samples, surface water samples, groundwater samples. And so as we go through this, we're going to continue to, the goal of the remedial investigation is to delineate it, to determine that nature and extent. So we got to figure out what that plume looks like. And so both on and off base, as we gather this data, we will continue to expand our search until we figure out what those outer boundaries are and we have that full picture. The other thing with that is right now we're installing the 13th well on base. That was the initial 13 wells that were slated for on base. We have 15 off base monitoring wells that we're working on installing. Right now where that one is at, we are currently working with the county, and our legal team has been working back and forth with them to get the access agreements taken care of for that. And then once that's done, we'll start installing those off-base monitoring wells, which will hopefully give us a good idea of what that off-base plume looks like. And with that, actually, the next slide, based on the information that we have so far on slide 5, we've started to get a little bit of a picture of what that plume is starting to look like. And this is based on our groundwater samples collected thus far. And as you can see, from all the information that we have, it's showing that there's a very tight channel that comes off of the base and it runs through there. It's the paleo channel. It's a very deep channel that runs through the aquifer in that area, and that seems to be where that PFAS impact is collecting and falling off base. And with that, with all the data that we've collected too from USGS studies, past studies, and this information that we're gathering, we're seeing that the groundwater flow through these areas is about 100 to 300 feet per year. So it's moving very slow, which in this instance is a good thing for this plume. With that, on the left picture that you can see, those are the proposed areas that we're going to put the off-base monitoring wells. And so we're trying to bracket that potential plume area because we want to actually have negative readings in those, so that way we know that we have found the outside areas of it, and then also have some that are inside so we can monitor how that is moving through that area. And eventually the long-term goal, having some cleanup method out there to pull that out of the ground and clean it up. With all of that knowledge, and as you can see, that path right there is through that southeast corner, that is what will bring us to the engineering evaluation cost analysis with pilot study. And so that is going to be, the pilot study is a small scale pump and treat system that will give us proof of concept on pulling it out and seeing what rates that we need to pull out, our capture zones and all of that, and then be able to be turned into a full-scale pump and treat system, which goal is to cut off that off-base migration totally. The way I like to explain it is, if you knock over a bottle of water, you're going to pick that bottle of water up and stop that off-base, stop that water from continuing to go before you clean up the rest of it. So we're trying to cut that off. So by picking up that bottle, the translates into, we're not using AFFF foam in training scenarios anymore. It's only real world scenarios out at the base. So if there's a fire, they will utilize it, but they also clean it up now. It's no longer just left out on the ground. So they clean it up. And so we're looking at making sure that we're not leaving any future impacts, and then cutting off that off-base flow coming off a base. So we're stopping that, and then as we go through that remedial investigation and figure out that full extent off base, then we can determine how to clean it up fully. So it's a multi-pronged process that we're going through, but ultimately it will get us to that end result. Now with this, with the engineering evaluation cost analysis, that will take all the data from the pilot study and look at what is the most ideal way to do an interim action. So we're obviously not to the end of our investigation, but as we continue to collect data, if there's ways like this where we know that there's a choke point right there and we can put something in there to mitigate off-base migration, we can do that. That's part of what this is. That ECA will then finally give us that we can go and expand the system. So right now, the pump and treat system will be about a 600 gallon per minute system that can be expanded to 1,200 gallons per minute and easily adapted to meet the criteria that we need to stop that off-base migration. With that, we are finally breaking ground. Tomorrow is the actual date for groundbreaking. So it's been a process to get here, but considering that last year in May is when we awarded this contract, and we've gone through the entire process of getting a contract in place, getting the funds, going through the design process, and now we're here, we're breaking ground, and it's been a year and a couple months. That's a very fast process, especially in the federal side of things, so we're moving on that. Now on slide 8, this is the due diligence for supplemental PFAS sources. Now we've been talking about AFFF sources this whole time, so that's obviously, PFAS is in all kinds of materials, and your nonstick pans to wax papers that wrap burgers, agricultural products. There's so many different things that PFAS is found in. So what the Air Force is doing now is, after looking at the AFFF sources, and we're continuing to do that, they're going to start going back and looking at what other potential sources could also be causing impacts, just to make sure that we're not missing anything. And that's what this is doing. And the first part of that is going to go back through and do a data review of all the chemicals that we use on base. And throughout the Air Force and DoD, they track all the hazardous materials that are used on base very closely, because one of the key things that they do with that is using the least hazardous materials, and so they track all that very close. Now they're going back and looking at these different potential areas that could have had PFAS chemicals in it and see, is there any potential releases to the environment from those sources. And so the first step is just doing a data pull and going through and talking to people, looking at all the past history of usages and seeing if that warrants any further investigation. And if any of those do, then we'll pull those up into our remedial investigation and continue and start sampling those locations and determining if or if not there is an impact. So it's not to say that there is, but the Air Force is taking the step to ensure that there isn't any other potential locations on the base. And then on page 10, this just shows a snapshot of what we've spent to date so far. And that's $37.3 million. And that goes across all the different investigations and also our engineering evaluation cost analysis with the pilot study. And there is, right now we're working on another $16 million project for an additional ECA pilot study that we're currently working to get under contract. We have the funds secured. We haven't gone into detail about it yet, just because we're waiting to get it under contract and ensure that happens, but we have the funds secured. So we're continuously looking at means to attack the impacts here at Cannon, and also, you know, it's a long process, so it will continue to take additional funds to ensure that we fully delineate this and address it. And then just the going forward, it's, you know, tomorrow we're breaking ground on the pilot study. My goal and vision is that down the road, once we start to have some good construction going, and hopefully maybe during the construction, and then also after the construction, is I would like to set up some site visits, so that way local leadership, including you guys and gals, would be able to come out and take a look at what we're actually doing. We're very proud of the work that we're doing there. We're trying to push through this. We understand the concerns of the community, and so we want y'all to see what we do. And that's why we also push, please come join these public updates that we do. We value your questions and inputs. It's meant to be an open session to where at the end where we can have questions, comments, concerns, and have that input from the community. So we do look forward to that. And again, the next public update is tentatively scheduled for the 15th of November. And again, that'll come out. We'll put out a press release, and we've gone over to having an RSVP. So please, when you see that, please RSVP, and that way we can have you slated to be accepted into the meeting. And that's just so that way we can control who's in there and make sure that it's a safe and secure place for people to come and have good communication with each other and no malicious things happen. And the rest of this is just from our normal meetings where we have additional information. We maintain administrative record where all of our final documents are posted, so that way anybody can go out there and get them and review them. And then also we maintain a website where we'll have pictures. All of these public meetings are recorded and posted up there, so you can go and watch them and live recorded. And we will be posting pictures as the construction begins and more installation of monitoring wells. We take pictures of it and post it up there to try to get out just what we're doing out there. So with that, I'll take any questions that you may have.
Okay, any questions? Commissioner?
And I do this every time to Chris. I still object to re-injection, and you know that, but
Yes.
I just want to.
Well, and re-injection has been done at other places, and one of the things that we will follow is, under CERCLA, we have an exemption that we have to follow because the exemption is there. We cannot apply for permits or pay for permits, but we are required to follow what the substantive requirements are in the permits. So part of that is what InMed's requirements are for re-injection. We will be following all of those requirements, ensuring that the water meets every requirement to be put back into the ground. The other reason that we selected that too is also so that way we'd have a net zero effect on the actual aquifer. So we'd have a net zero effect into the aquifer, as we do know that down going south of us, there are lots of dairies that utilize that water. So again, having that net zero effect, getting that cleaned water in there, which will ultimately go feed down gradient through that aquifer. And then another one of the things that we're looking at too is, we look at other opportunities that can be utilized with that, like reuse water. But the infrastructure down there is no infrastructure to utilize that water in any other location on the base. So that's one of the other considerations that's been taken.
Okay, Mr. Howald, do you have a question?
I sure do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so, Chris, I'm looking at slide number 7. And so where you're proposing your injection wells just outside of the treatment plant, and I'm assuming then y'all have looked at the drawdown of where your capture zones are to where that they don't have an impact on each other in the way that we're not just pulling clean water back out, basically?
Yes.
And recycling that. And then what type of treatment are you going to utilize at the treatment plant?
So right now, yes, we did an aquifer test when we began this project. So we pulled out, I think it was about 400,000 gallons. And so that went in the calculations to determine the offset on these extraction wells and then putting those injection wells up there. Part of that with the injection wells is to kind of help push and keep that plume over in that area and keep it funneled in there. But based on our groundwater gradients that we have, it all flows directly into that southeast corner. So in theory, and that's again, once we operate this, that will tell us exactly what's going on, and then we can modify the system as needed. But what it should do is it should run down that side, and our impact should still flow right into those extraction wells. Now, as far as the treatment plant, it'll be an ion exchange plant with some pretreatment, because one of the first steps we did was take a portion of the water and do a bench scale test to ensure that what we're gonna do is not only gonna treat the PFAS correctly, but it's also going to treat any of the other constituents that might be in there. And because, one, you wanna treat everything properly. As I said, we have to meet the requirements of InMed's permits. Even though we're not gonna have one, we're gonna meet all those requirements to put the water in there and make sure it's correct. We don't wanna introduce any other contaminants or cause any issues with the groundwater. So we'll have that pre-treatment, but the other thing it does also is it increases the longevity of the ion exchange resin itself too.
Thank you.
Not a problem.
Okay. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, back to the re-injection thing, and we always have to be aware of unintended consequences. And in Flint, Michigan, when those guys mixed treated water with river water, you created a situation nobody expected and became a big problem. And I want to share sort of anecdotally a story. So a year or so ago, they were talking about re-injecting some wastewater here. And in a discussion with a former state representative, they'd called me on a phone. I was in a pickup with some bankers from Texas. And the discussion was about re-injection of water. And the bankers asked me, they're going to re-inject water back into the Ogallala? And I said, correct. And they said, our Ogallala? Yes. And they said, if that happens, we'll pull every dime we've got invested in that community out. Because their concern is the unintended consequences. If something like that were to happen, if there was a reaction that we didn't anticipate, like Flint, Michigan didn't anticipate, then what happens? And so I guess the question is it worth the risk? If we get the water on top of the ground and treat it, really does it make sense to keep it on top? Because you've paid to pump it out. Why put it back in, pay to put it in, and then pay to pump it back out again? Would it make sense to look at some sort of a system where we can keep that water on top of the ground? We don't risk this unintended consequences, because if something happens and it gets into Texas, it's a big deal. And these guys made that clear to me at that point. So, like I said, I sort of share that I'm strongly opposed to re-injecting this water. That's our only water source now. Yep. And the risk-reward ratio, I don't believe is good, because when it goes bad big time.
Well, and with this, we have a panel of experts up in the Air Force that look at this, so it's not just us here at the base that are looking at this. So it's not wastewater that's being re-injected, it's water from the Ogallala that's being treated and cleaned and then put back in. And there's a stringent amount of requirements that goes into having to do this.
Sure. I understand. There was in Flint, Michigan as well, and it just didn't work out, because that's a pristine environment. We don't know what the treatment process, the pre-treat process, we don't know what happens when that's put into that pristine environment. It's an untouched environment, 400 feet deep. So that unknown is what my concern is. Because if it goes bad, then we got a real problem. And like I said, just economically, I don't understand why we pump it out, pump it in, and pump it out again.
Well, and that's where there's no infrastructure down there.
But wouldn't the infrastructure be cheaper to build rather than risk a contamination issue, a secondary contamination? We're cleaning up one contamination issue. We have the potential, whatever small percent that might be, of creating another, and that doesn't seem to make sense to me.
Okay.
That's my only question or comment.
All right, anything else? Nope, okay. I do have a question. I know you don't have an answer for it right now, but we were talking about this earlier, that the agriculture wells that were taken offline, I just am real curious as to what kind of impact that's had on the wells at Cannon. Maybe if we could get that possible report maybe for the next meeting?
Yes, and if you send me an email with that request, and I can get it to the right person that's over the REPI project. That's Jeff Davis. He'll be able to give you that information. But I'm assuming, because I know I'm familiar with the project and I've spoken with him on there, and I imagine that it's going to take us a little bit of time to see some of those impacts from that, because as I said, we're looking at groundwater flow of about 100 to 300 feet per year. But I do know that they are looking at the groundwater levels. In my projects, we take groundwater samples every year, and part of that is taking the groundwater levels to see how it is, which typically, as we know, it's a decrease in groundwater levels. But that's something that we'll get to know. How is it impacting? Is it decreasing the rate that the aquifer is going down, or is it keeping it steady? So we're definitely interested in that too, and I can get with Jeff Davis and have him provide that report for you.
Okay, that'd be great. We'd appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, appreciate the update. Thank you.
Thank you.
For the good of the order, does anybody have anything else that needs to be discussed? No? Okay, date and time of our next meeting will be 8:30.
Commissioner,
Mr. Muse.
And I want to say that I agree with Mr. Martin and Mr. DeMaio completely on the reinjection. I just can't see the possibility of contaminating, putting any contaminant in this pristine aquifer. I agree with you 100%. I'm here today to ask for your help. On June 1st, I met with the Public Works Committee about the water situation on Road 17, 19, and 18 and a half, Road G. Very disappointed in the outcome of that. And I'm asking this committee to take it up and see if we can't get that fixed out there. I'll give you a quick background on where this came from. In June of 21, I was made aware of the fact that we were running water past the dam at Running Water Draw on 19 and 17. Was going past the dam, down the draw, and into Texas. Evidently, we've been doing that for 50 years. And so it's been my goal to remedy that. A lot of efforts have been made, but they're inadequate and poorly done. I went to I had a meeting out there with Mr. Howalt and Mr. Bunch, several people from the city, Commissioner Jim Riddling from the county, and the assistant road superintendent, and we came to agreement on what could be done, how can we fix this, and thought, boy, this is great. But city and county cooperation. The city owns the park, so the county can't do anything on there. The city owns Road I, so there's several areas that have to interact and be done. We toured the 17, and we went around to 19 and 18 and a half on G, and everybody seemed to be in agreement. We were going to put 4 cuts in the north bank of Road 17, and the city was going to come put culverts in. Mr. Howalt agreed that he would go out. Everybody's in agreement on where to put them, and Mr. Howalt agreed to go out, have Barnett's go out and make the cuts, just a preliminary cut, not the permanent cut, but the preliminary cut, so that we could get that water transferred from the south side of the ditch into the dam. The county he did that, and the county took a long time to go put their culverts in, and in the interim, they decided to just put 1 culvert in, which I protested and met with the road department, and didn't get any success there either. So they put 1 culvert in. Then when they got the culverts in, the city was supposed to go back and do the drainage to grade so that they would drain good. And when the county decided to not put all the culverts in, Mr. Howalt refused to go back and do the cuts that were there to grade, and said he wasn't going to deploy until the county put the extra culverts in. So everything sits. The cuts that are made are level. There's no grade to them. It doesn't move water. The water has to push its way from the south side through the culverts or the overflowing ditches, and there's no grade. And I believe the principle for moving water is that you combine grade and capacity. And I don't believe any of those principles have been applied. And if you have a level ditch, then you got to have huge capacity to accommodate the water. We have a problem with the conflict between the city and the county on culverts that are crushed on Road I. And at the meeting, Mr. Bunce looked at the pictures we had. One culvert is 2/3 collapsed. The other one is egg-shaped and the edge is bent. And he made the comment that an oval culvert moves just as much water as a round culvert. Well, if you look at that picture, it's ridiculous that nobody will straighten it. The county says it's the city's culvert, and the city's, I haven't heard them say it, but I don't think that the city has gone out there with their graders and damaged the culvert. It's not a big deal. Somebody just needs to fix it. And I was totally disappointed in Mr. Howalt and Mr. Bunce's attitude about all of this. And then when you get up to the north side, there's a river that runs down Road G from about 4 miles north, and then I couldn't tell you how many sections from the county, from the state highway over to G. There's a tremendous amount of water comes down there. The way that Mr. Howalt did the correction to divert the water there is good, except that he dammed up the natural flow. The first rain on Wednesday night totally washed out the first half of what he put in. The previous agreement was that when they did the cut on the north side there at Price Carter's house, that they would take all the dirt and put it on the south side to build a bank, and that would just about double the capacity of the, and if you give a little slope on the north side rather than just have the narrow channel, and that wasn't done, so that all washed out. And the road is, the natural flow is dammed up and just causing all kinds of grief. I asked Mr. Howalt at the meeting what the grade was. He said he didn't know. And on all of the answers that he gave, he didn't have any numbers or figures or engineering. He just said, Jack, the water's flowing. Well, it is flowing, but he just left off one word. It should have been flowing poorly. And it all needs to be cleaned up and fixed so that we maximize recovery. And with the meeting that we've had and the statements that were made there by Price Carter and the representations made on behalf of Donald Rucker, the city's on notice that they've changed the flow of water and they have liability. And it's ridiculous that we can't get that done right. The ditch on the from Price Carter's house to the south needs to be opened up, and then another channel cut over to the dam. What he did will be a complement to the success of the program. It's not bad, but we've done some shots out there, and instead of having 3% grade, it's got 0.6. And that's basically, you got water running down the hill on Mr. Scott's land. You got water running down the hill to the corner. You go about 30 feet inside the gate and turn and run water back the other way. It's off to an angle, so you get some grade, but there's conflict there. and 6/10 slope is not enough to handle that water, particularly in a narrow channel. So I beg you to get Mr. Holwalt to go out and do it right, put some grade on the cuts that we made on 17 so that we get rid of the water. That's the contest, is to get the water from the south ditch to the north ditch to the dam. And you can't do that with a level ditch. So I beg you to take this up and let's get something done and do it right. There's not much grade either way, but the ditch on the east side, the fence line has about an 18-inch berm built up on it. So you're not just depending on the ditch, you have the ditch to carry what it will, and if it overfills, then you've got the whole, 40, 50, 60, 80 feet of the natural lay of the land that will become part of the drainage. And it's just not done right. And I would ask you to take it up and bring it before your committee on the agenda. If we need shots, if we need surveys, whatever we need to get this done right and quit being a minimalist on it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, date and time of next meeting, 8:30, Monday, October 9th, and we are adjourned.